Welcome, everybody. Good afternoon. Welcome to Uncouth Conversations, Uncouth Radio. We are here with the Los Angeles Sheriff candidate, Mr. Eric Strong. Eric Strong, thank you for joining us today.
Hey, Dan, what's going on, brother? Good to see you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, man, it's been a long time. Haven't got a chance to talk to you. You know, when you become a candidate, you get like super, you get busy. We don't get to chat like we used to, but I'm glad it's a good reason that we don't get to chat like we used to, because what you're doing is some important work. And I wanted to try to, get you on to bring you to some of the people in the community. So some of the people in the community could get to know you, because as we know, the turnout for sheriff votes aren't what they need to be. And a lot of people don't even know that you vote for your sheriffs. So I wanted to do my part and see what we could do to get the word out, to let people know that somebody born and raised from our community is actually out running, and, give you a chance to give your platform. But before we get in all that, Eric, give me a quick rundown of who you are and where you from, so people can understand who Eric Strong is.
Dame, I appreciate it. I think, I'm just a regular person. I mean, I was born and raised right here in LA County. Moved around a lot, grew up in San Pedro, Carson. Both of my parents worked in Compton for many years. So, I mean, even since before I was born. So I spent a whole lot of my youth growing up in the Compton and just in the LA area in general. I'm somebody that's experienced a lot of the things that a lot of our communities are crying out about. I've been profiled by police. I've been roughed up by police. I got my family members that have been incarcerated. I've been a victim. Family members have been victims of violent crime. And I just think I'm somebody that can really, really be in tune with and in touch with what we really need from law enforcement. And I've been doing this law enforcement thing for close to 30 years. And I've worked some of the most busiest, crime-ridden, violent areas probably in the nation, as well as some of the most affluent. And I think what I can tell you is that I kind of bring that 360-degree perspective of what the community really is looking for, what we need, and what law enforcement, can offer as well.
Well, before we get into any of the questions, because I know the biggest question that people always have when it comes to law enforcement, and specifically people who've been on the inside for a long time, what can you tell them that will make them feel like they should trust you?
I think what I would tell them is do your homework, really dig in and do a little bit of research and to see what my background is. Do your homework on the other candidates. I think, the way we're going to build trust is with any relationship. We got to sit down and talk. We got to sit down and have dialogue, and we got to earn it. I'm not asking anybody to just trust me just because I say, hey, trust me. I mean, the reality of it is we all write our own resumes. You know what I mean? They're always going to sound good. So I want to earn it. I want to have this dialogue. I want to have these discussions, and I want to show up, and I want you to see that I'm just a real person. And then, I got to perform. I gotta be where I say I'm going to be. I got to do what I say I'm going to do. Just like in any relationship, that's how you earn that trust.
Okay, I can dig it. And I know you said, you've been in law enforcement for 30 years. Could you just give us a small, like a small snapshot of what, what you've done in law enforcement, and even how you decided to get into law enforcement?
Yeah, I think I've done just about everything. I try to do as much as I can. I didn't really want to be a police officer growing up. I wanted to get into the legal field. I wanted to be a lawyer. So my mom, she was a court clerk for like 37 years. My dad was a police officer, and so, growing up, I didn't want nothing to do with what my dad was doing. I wanted to do something different.
Right.
I got this job for a law firm. And I was inside and I was really kind of seeing what a lot of the lawyers do. And I was growing up, I didn't know which direction I really wanted to go in. And I wanted to be close to the law because I felt like that's where I spent a lot of my time, with my mom and my dad, either in the courthouse or at the police station or something. So I just wanted to be close to it. I kind of figured I was going to do it for like a little bit of time to get it out of my system. And then I figured I was going to go on and do something else later, but I got into it and I never looked back. I have done just about everything. I mean, I've worked patrol, I've worked in Compton, I've worked gangs, I've been an FTO, I was on a SWAT team. I worked youth programs for many years. I taught the DARE, the SANE, the Get Real About Violence programs. I worked at the Lennox Youth Center for many years, bringing programs and writing grants and doing the PAL program. Worked several stations. I worked internal affairs for several years and did quite a few big cases. I investigated some force and shooting cases. I investigated some deputy gang cases. Worked in the custody environment, worked in courts, worked in risk management, which is basically an analysis on the inside of what causes risk and what are the weaknesses and strengths of the department. I was a unit commander of our advocacy bureau, which oversees 5 county council attorneys. And what we do is we basically analyze everything that comes through the department, be it uses of force, be it policy of equality, which is our sexual harassment, hostile work environment stuff, which is shootings, you name it, we analyze it. And I was unit commander of our audit and accountability bureau as well, which did the internal performance reviews, which was actually very interesting because it really gives you an in-depth view of what the internal workings of the department were. And I know we've talked about that a little bit. We can probably get into that a little bit later.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why I kind of want to give people the background. And me and you have talked about some of the internal workings. We have talked about what we feel like are the community problems, but also what we feel like are the problems on the inside with hiring practices. And with that being said, let's start a little easy and rev up to the craziness, because what I'm saying, there's a lot to break down. I know you got an event tonight, so we want to get you in and out of here. Do you want to talk about the event tonight that you're doing?
Really what I'm doing out there, I'm doing a lot of meet and greets. I'm asking people to bring their circle, their network to to amplify, really. So it's an event that some friends of mine or some people that I know have connected, and it's going to be kind of a semi fundraiser meet and greet where we kind of just sit there and get the message out. And honestly, this campaign thing is, you got to ask for money. I mean, the way you win is you get voters. The way you get voters is through exposure. The way you get exposure is through things like this with what you're doing, and through radio, television, print ads, and these kind of things, and all that stuff costs money. So it's combination of fundraising and amplification.
Well, speaking of fundraising and amplification, let's do it right now. Tell us where we can, donate if we want to donate to your cause.
So go to strong4sheriff.com. STRONG, the number 4, sheriff.com is my website. There's a donate link on there. You can click right on the button. You'll get a lot of information on there. You'll see who some of my endorsements are, which needs to be updated. You'll see some of my priorities and policies in there as well. But the reality of it is go in there and take a look at me, and just that $20, $30, $40 donation in masses is what really makes a big deal. And you mentioned it early on in the introduction. A lot of people don't even realize, aren't educated on the fact that this is a campaign, and that they have a say, they have a vote in it.
Yeah, and absolutely. We want to make sure that our people, start to get more involved in the local politics and the civil part of it, so we can start to make change directly in our community, and hopefully we can get that to go to a national level. But we can't do the things we need to do on a national level if we're not even taking part in the stuff in our local community. So I just want to make sure we bring some light to this the sheriff race, the sheriff run. Okay, so what's your philosophy on policing and crime prevention?
I think the community and law enforcement have to work hand in hand. My philosophy, on policing is that we need to be out there. We need to know the community that we work in. We need to know the people that we come in contact with. The only time we come in contact with people cannot just be, when it's negative, when we're coming into your home because you did something wrong. And the only time also shouldn't be when you're a victim. When I first came on back in 93, somebody told me, said, Eric, this is a 365, 24/7 operation. If you're working on Thanksgiving and somebody in your community that you're working on does not invite you over, or at least say, come by and pick up a plate, you're doing something wrong. People in your community, especially when they know you're out there on holidays, on Easter Sunday when you're out there working, if you are doing the right thing, people will know you and they'll know who you are. And that's what I've always kind of built my interaction with people on. So, it takes both. It really does. It takes community engagement from us as law enforcement, but it takes, community people be willing to, open up their ears and open up their minds to have conversation with us. But I think where we are right now, my philosophy is this: as law enforcement, we have to go out there. We have to create the engagement. We have to take the initiative. We got to go and just say, hey, we're sorry. We're sorry for where we are right now. We have to take responsibility for it. We have to take ownership, look in the mirror. And I think at that point, that's how we start building those relationships. And, let's face it, there's evil in the world. There's people that do bad things. Does homelessness and mental health issues and addiction need to be criminalized? No, but there are people out there doing bad things, and we need somebody that is going to, be the protectors of society. But we have to look at it as if, we can't have this us versus them mentality. We have to look at it as we're all one. We're all part of the same community. And I think that's a problem that we're having in law enforcement, especially in some of our Black and brown communities.
Appreciate that answer. So, one of the things that's been coming out a lot in the news lately, and I follow your candidacy page as well too. So I read the bulletins and the briefings that you send out. But one of the big things that's been in the headlines lately has been the sheriff gangs. So if you are elected, how do you plan on dealing with that particular issue?
Well, Dame, that's a great question because, here's the thing. We got a sheriff right now that refuses to acknowledge that they even exist. We have other candidates that have been part of the problem and had seats at the table for a very long time, high seats, and they didn't do anything about it then, but they're all coming out and saying, oh, I'm going to do something about it now. I'm the only candidate that's actually done an investigation and investigated some of these deputy gangs. So you won't get anything short of me saying, yes, they exist. Yes, they're out there. Yes, they're, violating the public trust. And no, we will not tolerate it any longer. When you look at the policies that have been written by the current sheriff, they have no teeth, they have no bite. They kind of dance around the real issue, and it doesn't really address it. So number one, first thing we got to do is acknowledge it and say it exists. And then we got to speak against it. See, it's never really been spoken against in the department. It's always been, well, don't put that logo on the T-shirt because it's going to make us look bad. Don't do this, don't do that. But they've never, ever emphatically came in and said, hey, let's stop it. So I don't need any more reports. I don't need another panel. I don't need a commission. I don't need anybody else to come and tell me, hey, you know what? Let's investigate this to see if they're here. They are here. Number one is, we have Office Inspector General that wants to conduct an investigation. I work in conjunction with them. You know what I mean? I comply with their request. I open the doors. I give them the documents that they want. I think that would probably be the best way to do it right now. You have outside entities, be it the DOJ, the FBI, the OIG, that wants to do these investigations. I say go forth, and I think that's too how we kind of build that trust. And I say, what do you need from me to help facilitate that? And then, from there, we have other disciplinary options that we can use. We have other administrative options that we can use to get people that are in these nefarious groups that are violating the public trust out of the communities so that they're not, creating that harm anymore.
And speaking of community, I wanted to know how would you engage with community organizers? Because I know you spoke about that a little earlier about, it's got to be something that we do in conjunction with each other. And I totally agree. And if you want to build that trust, then you will probably have to engage with the correct community organizer. So how would you engage them, and how would you get boots on the ground and make sure that us, the community organizers, have a voice when it comes to what's going on in the department, when it comes to, what's going on with you guys, and us knowing what's happening as your term goes?
Yeah. So there's so many different communities out there. We need representation from them all. And one of the things that I want to do is I want to build civilian or community advisory committees at every station level. So, we have the Civilian Oversight Commission, right, which is a county appointed thing. I think we need that at every station because people in San Dimas, the residents, which is one of our stations at the foothills of the mountains, what they need, what their issues are, what their concerns are different than what, they might need in West Hollywood Station, and what the residents and community members at Malibu, Lost Hills, what they need and what their concerns are far different than what, people in Compton need and are looking for. So we need to have that personalized stakeholder community at every individual location and station. And we need to open up our doors because one of the things what I think it really looks like is this. At Compton Station, we will get some citizen complaints, right? Those complaints may be different than what we get at Cerrito Station. So we need people, stakeholders, community engagers, community organizers, community leaders like yourself in these various stations that say, hey, look, this is the complaint. We want to follow it through this process. We want to see what you're doing. We want to see how you're coming to the conclusions that you're coming on. And so I want people, to bring, I want to bring people to the table so that they can be part of the decision-making process, if that makes sense. If it's a use of force, if it's a complaint, you got to know our policies. When you file a complaint, and I know we've talked about this, Dane, if you don't know what our policies are, and all we do is come to you and tell you, hey, well, we investigated your complaint and we took the appropriate action, but they tell you nothing else. How do you really know if they violated the policy, if they were disciplined, or if it was just swept under the rug? You don't. So we got to open up our doors and again, build that trust, allow people in. So that's going to be a big thing with the outreach. I mean, we have the Persian community, we got the LGBTQ plus community, we got the Hispanic, Latino community, we got the Black community, we got the Jewish community, we got the Asian community. I mean, we need representation from them all. And at some point, what I would really like to do is have these individual groups, stakeholders at the table, but maybe semi-annually, I'm thinking is kind of one of my plans. We bring them all together at one time and, twice a year for a big meeting where we can all sit down and engage together.
Man, that's something that's severely lacking, that community engagement. So I appreciate that. And like I said, we'll do what we can to make sure that we start to get those people involved as well, because it is very important that we are part of the process. We want to be part of, like you said, seeing complaints all the way through, having some accountability from the community side. Because I think that is very important when it comes to trying to clean up these messes, when it comes to trying to build trust. I think all of those things are very important.
And let me just say this, let me throw this in there, is that
go ahead.
There's no reason why we can't have that. A law enforcement hides behind, well, it's an open investigation. Law enforcement hides behind, well, it's for public safety. And like I said, I've been doing this 30 years. There are some instances where people are protected by legislation, and there are some instances where, public safety is a concern. But for the most part, there's no reason why we can't, open these doors and allow the systems that are already there. We already have oversight that's supposed to be there, but we're fighting against it. And I won't say we, but we have the department and the sheriff who are fighting against it every step. So I don't want to get on that because but I mean, honestly, there's no reason why we can't have that.
Absolutely. I agree. And speaking of that, what type of system would you try to have in place? What kind of safeguards would you have to protect deputies and officers from retaliation if they do want to report discrimination from the inside, if they do want to talk about misconduct? Because as we know, a lot of officers who have made reports, as we say, the good ones who tried to step forward and tried to report other officers, that thin blue line come after them, and they end up the ones being disciplined or fired or losing their job or just blackballed. So what safeguards would you do and put in place as the sheriff to make sure that there are protections and that those things don't happen and that cronyism doesn't continue?
Well, to be honest with you, there are safeguards already in place. We have policies, and that's where it really comes down to the leadership and the actual leader of the department. We have retaliation policies to protect employees, but if the leader doesn't believe in it, and if what you're reporting is about the leader and his cronies, and we have all this cronyism, then they're going to take very strong steps to protect themselves from that. So what we do is it's all about the messaging. The message on the inside has never, ever been, as long as I've been on this department, and my wife has been on this department even longer than I have, it has never been, if you see something wrong, you come report it. You know, what it's always been is, if you see something wrong, hey, how do you hurry up and fix it? And they may not come out and say that. You know what I mean? They may not come out and say, hey, don't report anything bad, just cover it up. They're never going to say that. But the messaging that comes from, as you just said, they get blackballed, they get blacklisted, the ones that get retaliated against. That's messaging. That's telling somebody, don't do the right thing, because if you do, you're going to be the one that's on the outs. You're going to be the one that's ostracized. So we have to move that pendulum back to the other side and say, no, look, do the right thing, and you will be recognized. You will be rewarded. You will be acknowledged for doing the right thing. And then those that do the wrong thing, and if you find out about anybody trying to do some retaliation, you have some very strong accountability for it. But there are some other policies that I will be working on that will encourage and make it okay to report the misconduct. And honestly, it really comes down to somebody just saying it's okay to do it. You know, it's not the policy, it's the practice that is creating a retaliation and the blacklisting.
Y'all hear that, folks? It comes down to leadership. It comes down to leadership. So make sure you get out and vote, because if you want the leadership to change and you want these policies to be enacted, then you need to put somebody in there who's not afraid to enact these policies. So you touched on briefly, you touched on talking about you don't think homelessness should be, criminalized. So what would be, and I know this is a huge problem for us in the county right now. So what would be something, and of course, I know you're not going to be able to cure homelessness as the sheriff by yourself, but what would be something that you think you could do to help decriminalize homelessness?
Well, I think what happens is people don't have anybody else to call on. Like I mentioned earlier, we're the 365, 24/7 operation, and when you want somebody to handle a problem, oftentimes the first phone they pick up and they call 911. So when dealing with the unhoused, we're dealing with the homeless. I don't even think we should be the initial point of contact. We need services out there. There's so many different varieties or demographics to even being homeless. There are people that have mental health issues. There are people who have fallen on hard times and they have their whole family out there. There are people suffering from addiction. There's people that want to be homeless that are out there by choice. So, we can't just put a blanket over everything and say, hey, here's a solution. But what I do think we need to do is work with stakeholders and collaborators and advocates that have the resources that are going to reduce the recidivism of the homelessness. So if there's people out there that have mental health issues, we're not going to find our solution to that in a jail cell. People out there with addiction issues, we're not going to find our solution to that in a jail cell. I mean, we've been doing that for years, for decades, and it's not working. So we need to do something different. Families that have fallen on hard times, that's not a law enforcement fix. People that are unhoused need protection. Oftentimes people, want law enforcement to come in and secure the public land and to protect them from the unhoused. But, there are predators out there that feed off of those they're out there and homeless. So it's a two-way street. I think what law enforcement really needs to do is take a step back and be there as a support when we can, but we're not going to find anything sustainable. We're not going to find anything other than a revolving door like we've always had if we're the only people out there addressing it, and we're the point of contact, that initial point of contact. So that's why I support, and I'm the only candidate supported, not building a new jail, because I think we need beds for services more than we need beds for cells. And I think if we do that, I think we're going to increase jobs. We're going to increase union, because, if we're providing healthcare services, if we're providing mental health services, if we're providing social services, those are jobs, right? And they may not be jobs going towards law enforcement, but they're jobs going towards sustainable solutions. So there's a lot to be addressed, and like you said, this is not going to be an overnight fix, not in the least bit.
Well, you know what? I'm kind of glad you brought that up as well. Bringing up the no need. You don't want to open a new jail. And you said and I know you said I know your opponents have been talking about if you close down the jails, they basically be fear mongering, right? Telling us they're gonna let all the violent criminals back out on the streets. Talk to me about that, and talk to me about why you are different on the issue than your opponents in regards to incarceration.
Yeah, like I said earlier, there's evil people in the world. I mean, there's just a reality of it. So, the sheriff and other people will have you believe that, oh, if we close the jail, because Men's Central Jail is where some of our violent, felons are being housed, that if we close that jail, we got to let those people out, right? If we close that jail, we're going to lose all these jobs. And it's just simply not true. We do need to have a transition plan for how to house, people that need to be in jail, and we can do that. And we can move personnel, we can move places. We have empty cells. We have the largest jail system in the county, and it's not. I'm sorry, in the nation. We have the largest jail system in the nation, and it's not this overly populated thing, but our jail system is also the largest mental health hospital. So something's wrong with that. You know what I mean? So there's a lot of people that are in jail because of a mental health issue. And whatever crime that landed them in jail, would they have been there had it not been there for their mental health issues? So what comes first, the chicken or the egg? We need to solve that problem. So no, there's got to be a plan towards transition. It can be done. Like I said, if we close the jail, it has to go in phases. Employees will be moved to other assignments. We're not going to just automatically lose those things, and we're not going to just let out, our child molesters and our predators and our murderers. No, we're not going to just let those people out into the world and into the street to create things. Will it be a process of maybe having to release some inmates? Yeah, absolutely. But again, there needs to be a transition, and all what we're seeing right now is a sheriff that just wants to sue the county, that wants to fight against it, rather than working towards a solution for it. And that's what you'll get with me, is somebody that's saying, hey, you know what? I don't agree with everything, but we gotta have some give and take here. We got to work towards solutions.
Appreciate that. So from your point of view, what is the overall morale in the sheriff's department right now?
Ooh, man, it's bad. It's bad. It's low. You have a lot of people that have been on for a long time in the upper ranks that are seeing the cronyism and the nepotism and the failures of our sheriff, that are just trying to lay low long enough to get their time in and just sell off, into the sunset. They just want to get to their retirement age and be done with it, which is sad, because that's a lot of tenure and experience. You have a lot of the young deputies. Again, like I said, we see it in the news. You have some that are just, rah, jumping on, Villanueva's bandwagon. And then you have a lot of them too that are seeing the harm that he's causing, to them. The fact that, when you're at war with the board of supervisors, when you're at war and you're constantly insulting and demeaning the very people that hold your purse strings, that has an impact on the deputies on the inside. He's fought against this vaccination mandate. If you look at like LAPD, which is comparable in size, right? Their vaccination rates were up around like probably 90%. Countywide is probably in the high 80s. And with the sheriff's department, it's below 60%. And again, what does that come from? That comes from leadership. It comes from the messaging. You got a lot of deputies that were saying, well, hey, we're fine. We don't have to do anything. The sheriff is going to protect us. He's not going to discipline us. And now they're looking at the board of supervisors' decisions, and they're like, wait a minute. I thought this guy had our back. I thought he was going to protect us, But had they listened to the right people, had they really just kind of paid attention, we learned from Carl Mandoyan. The sheriff fought so hard to get this one guy back. He says, I'm going to give him a badge. I'm going to give him a gun. I'm going to give him a job assignment. I'm the sheriff. I get to do that. Board of Supervisors said, okay, go right ahead. But he's not going to get paid. So who really has the authority there? You know,
Right.
so the sheriff says, hey, I'm not going to discipline you if you don't get vaccinated. But in essence, he really was supporting the vaccine mandate on the inside. But he said, I'm not going to discipline you. And the county said, okay, you don't have to discipline them because they're not going to get paid. They're not going to have a job anymore. So it's very divided on the inside. There's a lot of people that are feeling very, very, I want to say kind of disinterested and just kind of going out there and doing the things that they should be doing. It's just, it's a mess, and I've never seen it like this before. And like I said, the people that I know that have even been around even longer than I have haven't seen it as bad as this either.
Wow. So speaking of which, what has been your support? Because you're kind of a radical candidate in the sense that you're taking the position that people usually wouldn't take, because you're not doing the go along to get along campaign, right? You're not doing the usual tough on crime, you're not doing the usual campaign for sheriff, and you're not mirroring your opponents or Villanueva. You guys don't, fall in line really. So what is your support like from inside the department, or even from other places of law enforcement?
Surprisingly, I think I have a lot of support. I was kind of surprised when we did our ALADS and PPOA candidate forum. I kind of stayed true, not kind of, but I did. I stayed true, to my answers. And in some cases, I was the only candidate, speaking out against what everybody else was saying. And I really think, Dame, that people that know me know that I'm not just this blanket person that's just going to go throw a blanket over everything. We're going to address the issues, and we're going to do what's right for each individual issue. So, because I say, for example, we don't need a new men's central jail. We don't need to build a new jail. That doesn't mean I also want to be, soft on crime. Because I say something that supports community doesn't necessarily mean that I'm against, law enforcement. So I think they realize that. I mean, it's one of those things where people know me, and I've built credibility, and I take the time to have conversations with them. I just did a training a few weeks ago where, 60 deputies are in there, and, you got 50% of them saying one thing, 50% of them saying another thing. And I said, hey, let's take the time to kind of peel this onion layer back a little bit, and let's really look at it. And I think what people are really seeing is that here's a person that has done the job. He's done it for a long time. He's always treated us all well. He's always treated us with respect, which I've always tried to do. And is what he's saying really all that bad? And I really think there's a lot of law enforcement out there that are saying, look, it's just kind of time for change. We need somebody to go and speak on it, but they're fearful because they don't want to be the ones ostracized on the inside. And especially when your top leadership is the one creating that division, they're torn. They don't know what to do. So I honestly feel like I have a lot of support, and it's just like that movie, where you got the big bully in the crowd, and one person steps up, and then another person steps up, and the next thing you know, the whole town is stepping up against the bully that's been running the town for years. It just really is going to take that one person to get out there and just say, hey, let's just do things right. How hard is that? Let's just do it right. And I think, over time, you number one, you have a lot of people out there right now ready for that. But over time, people will be more comfortable and say, hey, you know what? I can get behind this.
Appreciate that. So I want to ask you too, many cases go unsolved in our community. My cousin being one of them, my cousin was killed, and we call the sheriffs all the time and try to get information, talk to the detectives. And, I know it's not an easy thing, especially when you talk about the lack of trust within the community, because now the community is no longer talking to the sheriffs, and you have all of these type of things. So what would be your plan of action for trying to get more of these cases solved and get the community more involved?
Well, we have to have people that care about the community working on the cases. and that's a big thing. We have to have, again, and it comes down to the leadership and the messaging. I can tell you that, and I know a lot of people, especially if there's people out there from LAPD or even our sheriff's department, don't want to hear this, but we had a young officer, Arroyos, get killed not too long ago off duty with his girlfriend. She wasn't killed, but he was, and it was in the news. And if you really look at it, I think in 3 or 4 days, we had 5 people in custody.
Mm-hmm.
And within about a week after that, we had a case filed, completely, filed with the federal government, through the FBI and the DOJ. What did that demonstrate to people? It demonstrated what we're capable of. It demonstrated that, we have the resources to solve these crimes. And as heart-wrenching as it is, look, this guy was a police officer. He was off duty. Was he any more important than your cousin, though?
Right.
And law enforcement is going to say, what the, WTF, why, how dare you say that? Well, hey, I'm sorry. But the reality of it is because of his job, was he more important? Should we put more resources behind him than somebody else? So we have the resources out there. We need to properly utilize them. And we need people that are going to, again, it's going to come down to that accountability. And we need people that care about solving crimes in every community, not just some community.
Appreciate that. And for my final question, so far, police reform has not been successful. It's been very ineffective. Even with all the different measures, the things they voted on, they tried to defund the police and all these things, but I still feel like we haven't got down to the nitty gritty of actual police reform and change. So what makes your plan a more effective approach? Tell the people why you think your plan will be effective in regards to reform for the sheriff's department.
Well, I think what we've been doing is we just keep doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. We have people showing up and saying what everybody wants to hear. And you talked about it. I mean, the sheriff is an elected position. So everybody is looking at our current sheriff, and he built his platform on reform, rebuild. He said he was going to do all these things, but nobody really stopped and said, well, what are you going to reform us to? I mean, you kind of took us backwards. You reforming it back to your glory days when you thought everything was great. So I think what we keep doing is we keep looking at the same criteria, and we're doing the same thing over and over again. And where that's important is because we haven't had anybody actually from the community, about the community, that really truly wants to do what's best for the community. And I think we need to stop looking at the ranks and the titles and the years, and we need to look for the strongest, best all-around candidate. And the sheriff's department is just one agency. It really is. It's just one agency in LA County of over 50. And I think when you really look at reform with chiefs of police, they're appointed. They are appointed. So therefore, once again, they kind of have to follow the lead of what the city management says, the city manager, the city government, the mayor, and the board. They kind of are beholden to them and what their philosophies are, because again, they're appointed and they can be removed oftentimes. So what makes me a little bit different is I'm going to speak, specifics, and I'm going to invite you, my family, my friends, the community, and to hold me accountable. And the reality of it is, I know this is not going to be an overnight fix, but we have to start taking steps towards the reform and the changes that we want. And I think once we start taking those steps, I don't know really. I can't speak to what everybody else's philosophy is, but what I can speak to is I can say this: look, what we've been doing is not working. In 1991. We had Rodney King, right? In 2021, 30-year anniversary, can we really say things have changed? And I'm going to say, in a lot of ways, no, they haven't. We have new technology, we have new cameras, we've got new equipment and so forth. But has the mindset of law enforcement really changed, and I don't think it has in a lot of ways.
Appreciate that, man. I really want to thank you for your time. I want to thank you for coming on and sitting with us and giving the people a chance to answer, because these were all specific questions from other people in the community who wanted to know, who you were, what you had going on, how you plan on doing it. And I think the biggest proponent and one of the biggest things we've learned today is that you want to invite the community in to help hold the sheriffs accountable to make sure we get the reform that we need. But that means we have to be involved as well. If we want the reform, we have to be a part of it. But if you are the leader, that means we will have somebody who will actually invite us in to, to have that accountability and to have that voice. So I just want to say thank you again. If there's anything you want to tell the people before you go, I got your website, strongforsheriff.com. If anybody wants to go and donate, tell the people when they can vote.
And that's so. Thank you, first of all, Dame. I appreciate it. I always like having this engagement with you because it helps keep it real, uncouth, as you say. But I think the biggest thing is people need to understand that they have a vote in this. This is an elected position. It's not just an appointed chief of police with the sheriff, and you need to get out there, and even if you don't say who you do want, at least say who you don't want. Be deliberate in these conversations. Initiate the conversation. Don't just wait for somebody else to initiate it, but initiate the conversation and talk about it. Encourage our young people, encourage our people to go out there and be registered and to be involved in these local politics. Everybody wants to show up for the presidential election and anything going on there, but we need to show up for these other local elections. And I mean, law enforcement is a big thing. You know what I mean? It really is. So you'll probably be getting, everybody will be getting mail-in ballots end of April, first week of May. Do your homework. If you don't mail it in, go to the polls on June 7th. Go and vote. I'm going to ask that you go and vote for strong, if you want some strong change and if you want the strongest all-around candidate. And the other thing that pushes these campaigns forward, the only way it keeps us going, are those donations. So anybody, like I said, just post it on your Facebook, post it on your Instagram, help amplify this message to get it out so we can do some good things for our communities.
Appreciate it. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Sheriff Candidate Eric Strong, strongforsheriff.com. If you would like to donate, appreciate the time. And, hopefully we get to talk to you when you're the sheriff.
Absolutely. You will, Dame. You can always call me, man, anytime. And I appreciate you. Thank you.
Absolutely. All right, y'all. Uncouth Conversations, Uncouth Radio. We out. We will be back at 6:30 p.m. for our regular show. Y'all know we got a lot to talk about tonight. So I'll see y'all in a bit.